There are quite a number of things we want changed in society, but how can we help create social change? We are back again on the book series with the authors of Somebody Should Do Something, How Anyone Can Help Create Social Change. This book was published by MIT Press, and a copy of it can be accessed on the link that I've pasted in the description panel of this video. One thing that I have to emphasize is that in as much as we do market the books here on the book series, we do also market the authors and the work that they do. So viewers and listeners, those of you who would want to check out the work that our guests do, please click the links that are in the description panel so that you can see their profiles, some of the publications that they have done, and other works that they do at their respective universities. I'm sure that they can get in touch with you, gentlemen. But let's get started with our discussion of the book. So for now, I just want you to give us a brief breakdown of the core ideas of this book and what you consider to be the central argument.
Sure, I'll start, and if Dan or Alex wants to add, they can jump in. So the book came out of research we had been doing for over a decade, starting in particular on philosophical and psychological questions about the nature of bias and prejudice and stereotyping and what people can do to change those problematic tendencies. And so we were doing a lot of work on understanding how individuals can change the biases in their heads. And one criticism we received in doing that work was that it's too focused on individuals, whereas another route to change people suggested, or critics suggested, would be to change the social systems or the social structures, the institutions, the laws that give rise to the kinds of biases and prejudices that we learn as children, that we're raised with, that we absorb from our culture. And so we had to think through what that would really mean, and what we came to realize was that changing bias and prejudice as individuals is always at the same time an act of changing systems and structures, or at least when it works, that's the right idea, that they're not two different routes to change, they're two different sides of the same coin. After doing that work, we started getting interested in climate change and what people can do to really meet the climate crisis. And we came to realize that the same dilemma was going on, that people who were focused on the question, what can I do as an individual, were often receiving criticism that that's the wrong way to go about it, that instead of trying to reduce your carbon footprint, instead we should take down the fossil fuel industry or something like that. And we realized that no, rather, again, changing individuals and changing the system are two sides of the same coin. They're not two different independent routes to change. And so the idea for the book came as a result of encountering that problem over and over again, whether it's racism or climate change or income inequality or misinformation. We realized that same dilemma was getting replicated. And so we thought to write a book really just focused on the question of social change in general and looking at all those different examples one by one. And so the main claim of the book is that when we think about what we can do as individuals to change the system, we need to think differently about that. And we need to think about our individual choices as connected to the institution, thinking about our relationship to systemic social change.
One brief note I would add is that the three of us have written tons of academic papers about these topics, including together. Those are not necessarily read by a lot of folks, and so another idea for the book was to try to address these topics in an accessible way. Our aim was to bring the kind of philosophical insights that we think we have to bear on contemporary issues in a way that was more accessible to folks. So we tried to focus and put at the forefront stories of real world people, including full-time revolutionaries who dedicated their life to making social change, as well as everyday people who found opportunities to make a difference, in hopes that that would help inspire a broader audience to try to get engaged in the fight for social change.
And as we got into writing the book, we also realized that format that was very rich in stories and concrete examples was effective for our message as well, because as Michael put it, it's very easy and it's just kind of natural for people thinking about social change to fall into these two camps. Either it's individual action or it's structural action. And one of the kinds of responses we would get when we would talk about this with other academics was, well, everyone knows that it's both and. What you're saying is sort of trivial. And at that level of generality, it's easy to affirm. But part of what the format of stories allowed us to do was sort of do the work of actually integrating them, rather than just pointing to the fact that they were integratable. We just gave example after example after example that people could take as models, but they actually showed how the two were connected in a myriad of different ways.
That's great. Thank you so much for that. And I think it's a point I also have to emphasize, especially with our audience, which is normally sometimes non-academic. It would be very important for you viewers and listeners who would want to get a copy of this book to read the profiles of our authors, those that I'm going to share on the description panel, so that you can get an understanding of their research interests and their research background, including issues, so that you can understand the history of some of the issues that they talked about in this book. Viewers and listeners, thank you so much for joining us. Please do not forget to click the links that are in the description panel. You are also welcome to like, comment, and share our work. Thank you so much. See you in the next episode.